Good evening. Good to have you with us in this edition of the Urban Debate. Tonight, we put the spotlight again on something that the whole world is waiting for with bated breath. And that's a vaccine for coronavirus. Though the various global companies have been conducting trials, many of them have claimed success at the stage that they are currently at, especially in the final stage trials. They say about 90, 92, 94% efficacy has been noticed or recorded so far. One really doesn't know what that means. And that doesn't give us an answer on when you and I can actually be vaccinated. When will we, in our country, be able to take it to the common man? That's the end interesting point, isn't it? That's what we want to know. We want to know how soon the vaccine will make it to the markets, will make it to the people. When can we heave a sigh of relief and give up on this COVID routine that we have? Well, experts would tell you, not anytime soon. So what is the difference between the hunt for the vaccine that we've been talking about so far? And is it any different now in the light of all of these recent announcements that have come forward? That's what I want to talk about today. Let's get realistic. Let's understand what are the challenges, especially when it comes to a mass level production, storage, distribution, and an immunization program then. Let's very quickly tell you where we stand currently across the world in terms of vaccine trials. The Oxford vaccine has completed its phase 3 trial. The Bharat Biotech vaccine has begun its phase 3 trial. The Cadila vaccine has completed phase 2. The Sputnik, which is the Russian vaccine, has entered phase 3. In fact, samples have already landed in India to carry out further trials. They already have a partnership with Dr. Reddy's here in our country. And so there are a series of these trials and vaccines that are being tried out. Now, here are some of the issues as we have identified. Once the world, or once we as India, and for people in our country, we identify a certain vaccine and we say, okay, this is the one that will suit us, that will immunize us and work for our kind of population. Then we have to identify and prioritize who gets the vaccine first. Work for that, by the way, is already on in terms of identifying the priority groups. Then comes the aspect of a robust cold chain for storage and transport. Now, the last two announcements, the one that came from Moderna and the one before that from Pfizer, both of these vaccines need extremely cold, ultra-cold temperatures, especially the Pfizer one. And these vaccines are literally frozen. So the challenge is even higher if this is the vaccine that the world finally decides to go with. Some of the others, and I'll tell you about those, still need -2 to -8 degree temperature for storage. So robust cold chain for storage is extremely important. Then this is not going to be like some of the other mass immunization programs that we have in our country currently, because this also talks about adults. It's not just about giving the basic vaccines to newborn babies or to little children. This includes adults, so the size of the population is huge in that comparison. We don't really have a consolidated database or a system in place to track the recipients, who's got it, who hasn't got it, the first dose, the second dose. All of that will have to be put into place. The government or the authorities will need to train and deploy manpower that can actually carry out this inoculation process. It's not as easy as just giving a polio drop. This will have to be injected under certain specific conditions. There's uncertainty over pricing, the cost burden to the government. Some of the talking points that we have highlighted in the past as well. But I want to go across to our experts tonight to understand now where do we stand. Before that, let's listen in to what the government really had to say about our vaccine preparation.
जो वैक्सीन्स हैं ट्रायल्स वो ठीक चले हुए हैं। फेज़ 3 में अब हमारे सीरम वाला वैक्सीन जो है ऑक्सफोर्ड एस्ट्राजेनेका जो सीरम यहाँ पे कर रहे हैं आईसीएमआर के साथ मिलके, वो फेज़ 3 उनका ठीक चला हुआ है, लगभग कंप्लीट हो गया है, फॉलोअप रह गया है, बहुत प्रोग्रेस है। भारत बायोटेक आईसीएमआर जो वैक्सीन है वो भी सरकार के साथ मिलके काम कर रहे हैं वो अब आगे बढ़ गया है, फेज़ 3 शुरू हो गई है, फेज़ 2 के रिजल्ट्स कभी भी एक्सपेक्टेड हैं। कैडिला वाले फेज़ 2 कंप्लीट कर चुके हैं, रिजल्ट्स आने की वेट हो रही है, फॉलोअप पीरियड ख़त्म होने की बात हो रही है। और आज मुझे ये बताते हुए प्रसन्नता है कि जो स्पुतनिक 5 रशियन वैक्सीन है, जो हमारा डॉक्टर रेड्डीज लेबोरेटरी के साथ कोलैबोरेशन में आगे बढ़ रहा है, उसकी भी ट्रायल की फेज़ 2 गोइंग टू फेज़ 3 इकट्ठा ट्रायल जो उसकी परमिशन उनको मिली है, उसका काम भी पूरी तैयारी हो गई है और जल्द ही जल्द सेक्रेटरी साहब बता रहे थे कि अगले हफ्ते तक वो भी ट्रायल इस धरती पर शुरू हो जाएगा। इसके अलावा बायोलॉजिकल ई का एक अर्ली फेज़ 1 फेज़ 2 ट्रायल है, वो भी हो गया। तो 5 वैक्सीन कम से कम भारत की भूमि पर आज ट्रायल में सम्मिलित हैं वेरियस फेजेस में। से एक ही ऐसा वैक्सीन है जिसको कि हमारे नॉलेज में -70 -80 डिग्री पे ले जाया जाता है और फिर थोड़े दिनों के लिए हायर टेम्परेचर पे भी रख सकते हैं, पर वो भी एक मुश्किल कोल्ड चेन की व्यवस्था, उसकी मुश्किल व्यवस्था है। ये सिचुएशन डेफिनेटली वैक्सीन को स्केल अप करने में बहुत बड़ी बाधा बनेगा। ये आसान किसी भी देश के लिए नहीं है कि इतने नंबर को कोल्ड चेन को ऐसे पैदा किया जाए, लेकिन हम इसको जानते हुए अपनी तरफ से कैसे इसको बढ़ाना होगा, कैसे इसको अगर देश में लाना होगा तो हमें क्या करना चाहिए, वो हम लोग इसको एग्जामिन कर रहे हैं। लेकिन हमें ये भी ज्ञात है कि इस वैक्सीन की डोजेज भी जो हैं इतनी नहीं मिल पाएंगी जो कि हमारे देश की ज़रूरत को पूरा कर पाए। तो इस पूरी तरीके से इसके ऊपर वॉच है। अगर ये आना होगा, इसकी ज़रूरत होगी, तो उसके लिए जो करना होगा, जितनी डोजेज भी हमें उपलब्ध होंगी उसकी तैयारी भी चल रही है। इन पैरेलल ऑल्टरनेट प्लान्स हैं। सीरम वैक्सीन is the Oxford vaccine developed by AstraZeneca, for which the trials are going on in 3-4 other countries apart from India. For India subjects, the doses have been given, both doses. Now they are on follow-up, and I expect their results to be ready by January. However, as we heard from media reports that AstraZeneca may be approaching other UK regulators for authorization maybe early next month. If that happens, we will also review what our strategy should be. Okay. That is an opportunity that might come. Otherwise, it will come in January.
So there you heard a series of reactions on various aspects that we've touched upon. Let's, without wasting any more time, say good evening to the panelists who are joining us right now. Dr. Ram Vishwakarma, Advisor for the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, joining us from New Delhi. I'll also have Dr. Anis Sinha, Associate Professor with IIPH in Gandhinagar. He's worked extensively with WHO and UNDP in the field of vaccines and immunization. And I have Vikas Dandekar, Senior Journalist, joining us this evening. Thank you so much. If I can first go across to Dr. Ram Vishwakarma. Dr. Vishwakarma, for us to understand, basis the various vaccine trials that are being conducted, how far along are we to say any of these can actually be used for people in India and, you know, would actually suit us and work for us?
Yeah, so I think as Dr. Paul was saying in his interview, these are all very advanced trial, phase 3 trials, 5 or 6 that are happening in the country. And they are multi-country trials, those are happening. And recently, Moderna and Pfizer trials on mRNA vaccines have come. So these are, I think, either of these will be available for emergency use authorization in next couple of months. This is why because the data that has come out is very, very encouraging. I mean, the much more than we were expecting that, response will be so good, 90% plus. As you know, by FDA, US FDA guideline, anything above 50% efficacy is considered good. So I think very encouraging data. And I would say next 2-3 months, one of these vaccines will be available as at least emergency use authorization in our country also, because India is one of the major partner in the production of many of these vaccines.
So would that effectively, okay, let's pick up that point, and Vikas, let me come to you. The fact that we are partnering on at least 5 of these vaccine trials, does that give us an added benefit for if any of them actually, reach the point where they can be used?
Right. So, yeah, I mean, while it is an encouraging information that, all of these vaccines have been found to be more than 90% effective in their interim analysis, let us remember that, these are all going through very, very fast track plans.
Yeah.
And, the placebo arm and the active arm both consisted of 95 patients in Pfizer group. Gamaleya, which is the research institute in Russia, their interim analysis of 92% effectiveness is based on just 20 patients at participants. So, not to dampen the enthusiasm, it's all very strong information. Everyone wants to hear that. But I think a lot of safeguards will be needed. Apart from the distribution and the procurement plans, which is all very fuzzy right now. We don't know exactly how the plans are going to be kind of rolled out. But I still feel that the second wave of vaccines, which will be coming probably in the second half of next year, will be based on more robust information and data.
Okay, so that's exactly what I wanted to talk, and it's fine if if it sounds like we're trying to take away from people's enthusiasm, but I feel people need to know realistically where we stand. The general perception is, for anybody who doesn't understand, that 94% efficacy has been announced. They are now already talking about production. They're saying we can manufacture XYZ billion doses for the world in the next 6 months, and so our problems perhaps by next summer will be sorted. Now, you're saying that first, one interesting point that you raised was that the number of people it is being tried on is very small. Now, if we had to compare this, Vikas, to some of the other earlier, vaccines that would have been researched on, or even any other trial for a vaccine at this level, how many people and what kind of a time period does that usually entail?
So basically, the earliest that we have seen a vaccine come out from research was for mumps virus, which was about 4 years. Ebola, which actually was a big problem in some West African countries for 6-7 years. We saw the vaccine getting a rollout approval last year. That was also a part of a massive global comprehensive effort. So generally, you don't see, for how long have we been actually looking at an HIV virus vaccine? It's been 20-25 years. A dengue vaccine of Sanofi, which took like millions and millions of dollars. And even after 20 years of research, they were not able to get enough efficacy. So, and moreover, these technologies are very new. So obviously, encouraging news comes on the mRNA platform really becoming effective. CureVac is also one of the companies. There are many of these companies which have actually used the same mRNA platform. At the same time, I feel a couple of thousand, interestingly, all of these phase 3 trials are actually supposed to get over by 2021, 2022, some 2023. But they're all announcing the results at the back of interim analysis, which is on like 95 patients. So interestingly, if I can also add this part, out of this 90 participants were actually on placebo. Only in 5 who were actually exposed to the virus didn't really get the virus. They did show some initial symptoms, but they didn't get seriously ill. So that gives them the benefit of saying that it is a 94.5% efficacy. So I feel a lot of data is being used to show that it's very effective, it's very good. But I feel there is a lot of scope to really study these vaccines very closely.
I think there is a race. It's a global race. Everybody wants to be the first. Everybody wants to be ahead. Many of the companies probably want to make the most of it with every single bit of positive news coming in and what it does to their own future, their own stocks. And so we need to keep that on one side. But if I can ask a very basic question, and Dr. Anees Sinha, maybe you can help us here. Vikas is talking about, the trials that are being conducted where these interim results have been announced, and some of them being under placebo. What does that mean? What does it mean to say that these volunteers or humans are under placebo?
Yeah, like this is a clinical trial in the phase 3. For example, if we take up the Moderna, who is claiming, or the results are that 94.5% efficacy is there. So that what they have done is they have taken 30,000 individuals, and out of that 15,000 they have administered the vaccine, and remaining 15,000 they have given a placebo. It means that it's something neutral thing. It can be anything other than the vaccine or the drugs. It's just a placebo. So it's that they have given, and based on that analysis, they have calculated the vaccine efficacy is basically the proportion or the incidence of disease among vaccinated compared to incidence of disease among the unvaccinated, and that they have come out with this. So among the placebo, they found some 90 individuals who got infected with COVID, and among those who were administered vaccine, only 5 got, and the symptoms were also milder. So this is what the placebo is actually neither not a non-pharmaceutical something which doesn't act like a drug or a vaccine.
Okay, thank you for that clarification as well. I think people need to understand this. Now, why are we saying this? Because take a look at the series of announcements that have come. For example, if I had to tell you what is it that Moderna has to say when they say they have 94.5%, they have witnessed that kind of efficacy levels in their interim analysis and no significant safety concerns. They also then go on to say, oh, we will produce 20 million vaccines doses by the end of this year. We already have agreements in place to supply to United States. We have agreements in place to supply 80 million doses even to the European Union. We know what the pricing is. We know how it's going to be stored. But we still don't know if it's going to work and if it's going to work for a larger set of people. Similarly, if you say what Pfizer has announced, efficacy of more than 90%, expected to produce globally up to 50 million doses in 2020. You struck a supply agreement with US worth nearly $2 billion. So they're also talking about this, and which I think brings us to the next critical aspect, which is about the manufacture, the distribution and the storage. Now, Dr. Vishwakarma, if I can come to you on that. So far, of the vaccines that are currently under trial, is there anyone that we are prepared to manufacture and distribute? Logistically speaking, is India ready to, say, by early next year or even mid next year, start pushing it out to people?
Yeah, so we have to divide these vaccine into two categories. Pfizer, Moderna is mRNA-based platform. It is much easier to manufacture the quantities that you need. Let's understand that, because this is an in vitro synthetic method, much smaller GMPs, much less requirement of the vaccine. You can produce the amount that you want. So Pfizer and Moderna will be able to produce. India, as of now, with these two companies have no agreement. So that's a part. The other 3-4 vaccines, Indian companies are partnered with all of them, but they are much more demanding as far as production is concerned, because they are mostly adenovirus, transfected, spike protein, other protein, and they require much larger GMPs, much different, because these are sort of culture-based production facility, downstream processing, production, all this much more complex GMP. So I think India is much better position. If any of those other than Moderna, Pfizer come into play, then India is much better position. But if these Pfizer and Moderna things come, then perhaps we have to tie up with both these companies to receive in India. But I will repeat, much easier to produce larger amounts, larger number by mRNA platform than the other platforms. So we have these kind of two scenarios happening here. And I would say that if any of these get approved, we have to adopt a different platform. So other we are very comfortable. Serum Institute, Reddy's, and several companies are involved with many. Most of these vaccine platform, Indian companies they're producing partners, other than these two.
Okay, that is one aspect about manufacturing. The other would be about transport and distribution, where also there is a difference. Like you said, Dr. Vishwakarma, the mRNA ones, the synthetic ones, they need ultra cold temperatures, whereas the rest of them, especially the ones that India has partnered on, I'm given to understand they would need to be stored at about 2 to 8 degrees, which is probably going to be simpler to do. So until we know which vaccine it is, Dr. Anish, can we start preparing our cold chain if we don't know what we need?
Yeah, you all rightly said that if we have a vaccine which can be stored at +2 to +8 degree, which are generally all routine immunization vaccines are stored. So we have a cold chain mechanism established, though for the routine immunization, right from the national level up to the grassroots primary health centers level. So, and in overall, there are 27,000 plus cold chain points that are available with the government sector, which can be definitely utilized for this COVID vaccine storage. And the transport mechanism is also designed for the vaccine transport between +2 to +8. So if the vaccine, if it is for the +2 to +8, we have some. And of course, because we have a system for the routine immunization where we generally cater to the children below 5 years and the pregnant women, but here is the entire nation of 1.3 billion population, so vaccine management will also be critical. And also if need arises, and definitely there will be some need for additional cold chain space which can be robbed in from the existing cold chain storages that are available other than the health sector also. So that will be easier and feasible for us to do that.
Vikas, would you want to come in on this one big challenge as well, and how we prepare for it? Vikas, would you want to come in on this big challenge about transportation and storage, and how we should be preparing for it right now?
To me,
yes.
Tanvi?
Yes. Yes, Vikas, to you. Okay, I'm not too sure, Vikas Dandekar, if you can hear me. That question to you. Yes.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if I get it right, it's about the logistics.
Yes.
So from whatever we have found, obviously, this is an unprecedented situation, and no one can actually prepare it. But to the extent that we know, I mean, plainly impossible to have a vaccine which requires a cold chain of -70. On the same mRNA platform, Moderna has mentioned that up to 30 days they can actually get the freeze done between 2 and 8 degrees. But again, if it is about 6 months, then that also will require about -20. And no vaccine actually can work without a cold chain. I mean, there will be very, very few thermostable vaccines. Only one which I remember was done by Serum Institute for Africa, Menafrivac, for meningitis. I think everyone will have to prepare ground up in terms of preparing for this mammoth task. And to the extent that we can actually see from the government, we don't hear much about how the logistics preparations are happening, what it is actually doing in terms of mobilizing cold chain resources. I heard one of the speakers talk about 27,000 cold chain facilities points. But in our discussions that we have actually done, we know that only about 5 or 10% of those are actually pharmaceutical compatible. So we do not know. There is a lack of clarity so far as cold chain facilities are concerned. I mean, imagine how will it actually reach a place like Jaisalmer, where the temperatures will be very high, where the potency of the vaccine will really get impacted. So a lot of clarity will have to come from the government, and that has not actually happened so far.
Dr. Anish, would you want to comment on this and the existing, because this has been often written about as well, these existing 27,000 cold storage points, and in fact, the entire, vaccine intelligence network that, many are talking about?
Yeah, there are that 27,000 cold chain points are operational for the routine immunization system. So we have some system. Definitely that will be very minuscule in terms of the COVID vaccine, because this is needed for the entire population. Secondly, the electronic vaccine intelligence network that established almost in all parts of the nation now, barring few states only which are remaining. We have an electronic vaccine intelligence network, which is a digital platform where vaccine logistics are managed, including its transport is visible, the temperature is remotely monitored, like a PHC in a remote area, the temperature can be monitored from a remote location to a large extent. So the system is there, but remember, we have the system only for a routine immunization to cater to that, and that caters to around 2.7 crore children birth that are there in our country annually, and the pregnant women that are there. So basically, it's too less, hardly 10% or 5 to 7% of the entire population. So definitely we need to augment cold chain. But importantly, if we manage the vaccine supply and the vaccine administration in the field, something can be taken care. And also, we are not going to get entire vaccine supply right in the beginning. So we need to prioritize who will be the first. So those all things the system, the government will have to start planning for it, so that we get the vaccine how much we can administer, and that way we can manage the supply and storage system. And the cold chain storage available in the other sectors, like there are cold storage for various fields, like in the rural areas also it's there. So those can be utilized. It has been utilized earlier also in some of the remote locations.
In fact, on you're right on the prioritization fact, and we know that there is a group that the government has set up that's looking into this, and the suggestions obviously that have been made include the healthcare professionals, our frontline warriors, our law enforcement agencies, people who are out there have a higher risk and exposure to the virus will probably be the first ones to get it. So, Dr. Vishwakarma, again, it comes back to the simple question about from the time that a vaccine gets discovered, how long would it be for people, for the government to even roll this program out and even reach, say, half of our population? 1 year, 2 years, can we put a ballpark figure to it?
Yeah, so I will make 2 points. One point I will make to earlier point about this Moderna and Pfizer thing. I must clarify.
Yes.
Both these vaccines will come in two formulation form. But we are talking about the solution form, which requires this ultra cold chain. Both these companies are developing lyophilized powder form, which will be like other vaccines, which will be stay in the fridge and freezer. Number two, if any country is prepared for rollout of the vaccine, India is. India has the maximum experience because of long universal immunization program, so I'm not worried about that part. Number three is that as and when it gets approved, all the population is not going to be vaccinated immediately. Every country has a priority, and we are also doing internal discussion on a very serious note across the government departments that there will be prioritization of the first set of people who are the most vulnerable people, obviously hospital staff, people who are working with healthcare workers and all that. And I think there will be a priority list will be created. So it's not going to be that whole country of billion plus is going to be vaccinated, as an emergency. And plus, anyway, remember, we have 90% people still in the country, or more than 95% people who don't have this virus. So I think we are in much better shape than Western countries. Western countries are dealing with much larger emergency than we are dealing with as far as numbers are concerned. So I consider very positively that we are because of our experience with the universe, many of the, I must say this, that vaccines in Western world, structural immunization has disappeared over the last couple of decades. They don't immunize their children the way we do that.
Correct.
So I think we are in a much better shape. I am very confident that as and when these gets approved, without any delay, I tell you, because of our horsepower, I would say, of the production of these vaccines, no matter which vaccine get approved, India will get at the same time like the Western world. That I can tell you with a confidence.
No, fair enough. I understand what you're saying. I also take the point that you made that we at least have some amount of existing structure. We have process in place because we do have a mass immunization program already in place. So I get what you're saying, Dr. Vishwakarma. But to say that now a majority of the adult population will also have to be immunized, it will take time for the last 10, 15, 20% of the people to get it? What I am trying to understand is, or make our viewers understand, is the general perception that's there that once the vaccine is found, within a few months, we would all have it. I'm trying to bust that myth.
Yeah, so let me say this here. So you cannot just go on randomly immunizing people, right? You have to select people on the scientific basis. People who have already developed robust antibody system. Majority of people are developing. Almost 90% people who have got infections or got even asymptomatic, they have developed. You don't have to go and immunize them. They are already immunized by the virus itself. So I think these will be segregated on the scientific basis. And I think there is no reason to be alarmed that this will be very difficult. I think because of India's experience, feel very confident that India will do much better off as far as the segregating population. How do we do this? Plus, the cold chain also, like my co-panelist said, we have much robust cold chain available to us. We have to just activate and at a larger scale. So I think we are on a better footing from several counts than many of these countries.
Okay, fair enough. Dr. Vishwakarma, Dr. Sinha, thank you so much for joining us. Vikas Dandekar, always a pleasure to have you on your show, on our shows, with your experience and insights. Thank you for speaking with us. In fact, to the point that was made at the end, which is about storage and logistics and how and where India stands, let's try and bring in one more view. And this is Chandar Agarwal, MD for TCI Express, a company that does function in this field. In fact, we're going to go across to him in just a bit. But let me just tell you what we have understood so far about the stages of vaccine. And I want to read this out to you, the 9 stages before the vaccine actually reaches you. Stage number 1 is actually successful clinical trials. We've not even reached the end of stage 1. Some of the companies are claiming that their interim analysis shows that they're well on their way and could be just at the brink of finding the vaccine. Stage number 2 is the necessary agreements to import the vaccine. Some of those agreements are already in place about partnership. India has already partnered with 5 different companies for 5 different vaccine trial and researches that are going on. Stage number 3, meeting requirements to store the vaccine. This is where we will have to do some additional work once we know what kind of vaccine are we looking at. Stage number 4, procuring and transporting the vaccine. Again, depending on the temperature that is required and as it gets manufactured, the doses that come in to take it to each and every single person in far-flung areas of our country. That's the next part. Stage number 5, finalizing distribution mechanism to the states, from the center to the states, and then from there ahead, how the states will actually transport and distribute the vaccines. Then comes the stage of last mile delivery. And there you will also need trained staff to handle the vaccines, trained staff to inoculate people. Not as simple, like I said, as giving polio medicine. But that's when it will finally reach you. Let's try and understand a little bit more about it. I've got Chandar Agarwal, MD of TCI, joining us this evening. Good evening, Mr. Agarwal. Your company functions in that field, which could get very crucial to when we start talking about the COVID vaccine distribution, storage, handling of the entire thing. We do understand that a few of the companies are already under the radar. Tell us, how can India be better prepared for when we have found a vaccine?
I feel that India is already quite well prepared in terms of the way the vaccine is going to be distributed across the states. We already have a mass immunization program that is going on. And what my further understanding is that to get to the villages and the hinterlands of the country, a road express network will be required on a large scale, and a lot of it would be done. Transportation would be done through reefer vehicles on the road. So I think what the government is already emphasizing on the highways, that will come to play now. The second thing is that what we understand is that the the vaccine is going to be needing a temperature of 8 to 12 degrees Celsius. It will not need like deep freeze or something like that. This is the information that we have received. Now, for that, we are better prepared than the deep freeze transportation. Therefore, I believe that things will be much better better control to be distributed and across India. We will see that the road network will help getting it from all the way to Ladakh, all the way to Leh, and Kanyakumari. So this will be a very plus point for the country.
So if for our viewers to understand, is there an existing network already, and do we have enough of companies present who can provide this kind of a cold storage? Let's say even if it is 2 to 8 degree or 12 degree temperature, or it requires colder temperature, is there an existing network that the governments can then tap into and utilize?
So what we have also found out is that the government is going to be giving out tenders.
Yeah.
Not to one company, but they will be giving it to, I think, location-wise. And whichever company is strong in a particular location, they can definitely go for it. Also, companies which are pan-India, like for example TC Express, they can also bid for a larger chunk of this transportation distribution. And I think in general, it is not going to be really a big number to start with, because government has also given the mandate that it's going to be the health workers first, and then it's going to be the army and things like that,
Right.
the aged people. So I think it will be very well planned out, and it will be a good opportunity for everybody. And of course, companies like ours, which are present, like mine, which is present all over the country, will benefit much more.
All right. Thank you so much, Chandra Agarwal, for speaking with us and shedding some more light on the existing logistical network and what can be provided by several of the private companies, with the government going ahead with that tender process. Thanks for joining us.